Thank you all for being here today. Montana has always been defined by two things: our natural beauty and the grit of its people who call this place home. For generations, Montanans have thrived because we struck a balance. We respect and protect our environment, but we also believe in hard work and resource development and the freedom to build a life without unnecessary government interference. That balance has been disrupted, not by the people of Montana, but by a court decision that ignored common sense and handed down an agenda-driven ruling in the Held v. State of Montana. Now let's be honest, this isn't about climate, this is about control. It's about shifting decision-making power away from the people, away from their elected representatives, and giving it to judges and activists who have no accountability to the voters. That's why I sponsored House Bill 285, because we refuse to sit back and let this happen. House Bill 285 is about restoring that balance. What does it do? It makes sure that when we review projects under the Montana Environmental Policy Act, whether it's a new power plant, timber project, or infrastructure build, we're focused on what's real, not theoretical climate models, not projections pulled from studies designed to create fear. We're talking about actual measurable impacts here in Montana, not what some bureaucrat in DC or an environmental group from out of state might happen in 50 years. Here's why this matters. Montana is a resource-rich state. We have energy, we have agriculture, and we have timber. These industries aren't just sectors on a spreadsheet. They're the lifeblood of communities. They fund our schools, support our businesses, and keep families together. But under the Held ruling, every project tied to these industries could be paralyzed, not because of real environmental harm, but because of lawsuits based on vague, speculative claims of global climate impacts. Think about that. You're a small business owner trying to expand. You're a farmer wanting to build new infrastructure. Suddenly you're tangled in red tape because someone claims your project might have climate impact. What does that even mean? It delays, it means legal costs, and it means jobs lost. House Bill 285 fixes that. It doesn't roll back protections, it restores clarity. It says Montanans will focus on facts, not fear. At the end of the day, this is about who gets to decide Montana's future. I believe it should be to the people who live here, work here, and raise their families here, not judges or out-of-state activists. Montana's future is too important to be left to chance or to a courtroom. House Bill 285 ensures that future and stays in Montana's hands. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Today I would like to talk about House Bill 270, legislation focused on bringing clarity and consistency to how we conduct environmental reviews under the Montana Environmental Policy Act, or MEPA. MEPA was designed to ensure that when projects are proposed, whether it's infrastructure, energy development, or resource management, we thoughtfully consider potential environmental impacts. That's a good thing. We all value Montana's natural beauty, clean air, and healthy environment. But for MEPA to work effectively, the process needs to be reasonable, focused, and grounded in practical outcomes. Over time, MEPA reviews have drifted beyond their original purpose. This creates unnecessary delays, uncertainty for businesses and communities, and added costs without improving environmental outcomes. House Bill 270 makes key changes to address these issues. First, it clarifies that MEPA is primarily a procedural law. Its purpose is to inform the public and the legislature about potential environmental impacts, not serve as a tool to block or regulate projects beyond what existing statutes allow. This is an important distinction because MEPA was never meant to create new regulatory authority. It's meant to provide information to support better decision-making. Second, the bill explicitly states that MEPA does not grant additional regulatory power to state agency beyond what's already outlined in existing laws. This ensures that environmental reviews focus on what the law intends, assessing impacts and informing decisions, not adding new layers of regulation where none were authorized. These changes bring clarity, efficiency, and fairness to the process. Environmental reviews will remain thorough, but they'll be focused on real, measurable, and local impacts, things we can clearly identify and address. This helps reduce unnecessary delays and gives businesses, communities, and state agencies the predictability they need to move projects forward responsibly. Importantly, House Bill 270 does not weaken environmental protections. Montana will continue to meet all of its obligations to safeguard our natural resources. What this bill does is ensure that MEPA works as it was originally intended, to provide clear, objective information to inform decisions, not to create regulatory hurdles that slow progress without adding value. This is about balance. It's about protecting our environment while ensuring that Montana can continue to grow and thrive. I'm proud to sponsor this bill because it reflects a thoughtful, reasonable approach to environmental policy, one that respects both our natural resources and the people that live and work in Montana. Thank you.
Good afternoon. The Held versus State of Montana decision didn't just make headlines. It sent shockwaves through Montana's economy. This wasn't a simple court ruling. It was an open invitation for activists to weaponize our environmental laws against the very industries that keep Montana running and Montanans employed. That's why I sponsored House Bill 291, because we can't afford to let unelected bureaucrats and local regulators take the perceived invitation and run with it. House Bill 291 is straightforward. It stops the Department of Environmental Quality and local air quality programs from imposing environmental regulations that are stricter than federal standards. If the federal government sets a standard, that's the bar. We're not going to let state agencies or local boards move the goalpost just because they feel like they can, or because they're under pressure from special interest groups. We've seen what happens when agencies are left unchecked. Businesses that meet every federal requirement are suddenly hit with additional layers of regulations from state or local entities, rules that do nothing to improve the environmental outcomes, but everything to drive up costs, delay projects, and kill jobs. It's not about protecting clean air or water. It's about creating roadblocks, in their opinion, for the people trying to do and get things done in our state. What House Bill 291 does is put an end to those roadblocks. It draws a clear line. DEQ and local air programs don't get to invent new rules beyond what's already required. Their job is to implement the law, not add their own layers of regulation on top of it. And let's be clear, this bill doesn't weaken the environmental protections. Montana will still meet every federal standard designed to keep our air clean and our environment healthy. What it does is prevent unnecessary, politically motivated regulations that stifle economic growth without providing any real environmental benefit. This is about fairness. It's about consistency. It's about the opportunity for us to do what is right. A business in Billings should not have to operate under a different set of rules than a business in Kalispell. House Bill 291 ensures that no matter where you are in Montana, the rules and the playing field are the same, and they're based on science and law, not ideology. At the end of the day, House Bill 291 is about protecting Montana's future for everyone. It's about making sure that when businesses want to invest in our state, they can do it without fear of being buried under layers of unnecessary regulations. Montana is open for business, but only if we keep it that way. House Bill 291 helps us do just that. Thank you.
Thank you. The Held decision was a gift-wrapped present to radical environment activists, an open door for endless lawsuits designed to shut down Montana's fossil fuel industry. It had nothing to do with protecting the environment and everything to do with weaponizing the courts to strangle our economy. That's why I introduced Senate Bill 221, because we're not going to sit back and let Montana be steamrolled by extremist agendas hiding behind environmental buzzwords. Senate Bill 221 makes it crystal clear state agencies will conduct greenhouse gas assessment for fossil fuel projects like coal mining, oil and gas, drilling, and energy production. But here's the catch. These assessments are information only. They cannot be twisted into tools to deny permits or slap on burdensome conditions. No activist lawsuits, no bureaucratic overreach, just facts. We're also cutting off the endless loopholes. Projects that are exempt from environmental reviews stay exempt. And when agencies are forced to consider alternatives, they'll only look at options that are economically feasible and technologically achievable. No more Fantasyland idea from climate crusaders who think Montana can run on solar panels and wishful thinking. And for those who think they'll tie up every project in court, Senate Bill 221 shuts that down too. If you didn't bother to participate in the public comment process, you don't get to show up later with a lawsuit. We're done letting out-of-state activists parachute in at the last minute to sabotage projects Montana rely on for jobs and energy. Montana is not a playground for environmental extremists. Senate Bill 221 puts us back in the driver's seat, protecting both our environment and our ability to develop the resources that power this state. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Sonja Nowakowski, and I serve as the Director of the Montana Department of Environmental Quality, and I am so thankful today to our elected officials for inviting me to join them. I stand here very proud of the great work that the House and Senate are both doing with the Montana Environmental Policy Act, or MEPA, and the package of bills that is now moving through the legislature. MEPA has played a role in guiding Montana environmental reviews for the last 40 years. At its simplest, MEPA is a process that ensures we think about the potential environmental impacts of our decisions. But as we've heard, MEPA has been in the spotlight recently. Last year, the Montana Supreme Court issued a series of rulings that required the state of Montana to develop solutions to reduce potential litigation and to provide certainty to Montana businesses, large and small, seeking to make a living in our state, and our legislators have stepped up to that task. The court's rulings also have the potential to impact Montana's energy sector at a time when Americans have already seen the cost of electricity rise nearly 30% under the last administration. This is another reason we are so grateful to the legislature for engaging in this important policy discussion. Montana is an energy-producing state. We know from a recent Western Electricity Coordinating Council report that electricity demand in Western states is expected to grow more than 20% in the next decade. Montana has an important role to play in the future of affordable American energy. DEQ convened a bipartisan working group to listen to Montanans and to develop solutions for the legislature to consider. I'm delighted to stand here today and see some of those recommendations advancing, and this report is available and folks are welcome to copies and to review that report. The package of MEPA bills moving through the legislature continues the work that we've done together in the last 4 years to cut red tape and to streamline the regulatory process for those who do business or for those who are looking to do business in Montana. We've made a lot of progress. And let's also be clear, as you've already heard, about what we are not doing in these reforms. We are not reducing the standards Montanans have come to expect when it comes to clean air and clean water. We are creating an environment where businesses and industries are drawn to our state, where energy and transmission developers can come to Montana and know what to expect, so that we can increase the supply of affordable, reliable energy with the goal of reducing energy costs for consumers. On behalf of DEQ and the governor, we appreciate this collaboration with the House and the Senate on this very important package of bills. Thank you.
Alrighty, and with that, we'll open up to a couple questions. Make sure if you have a question for a specific bill sponsor or the director, please direct it that way. And yeah, questions.
Blair Miller with Lee. There's 4 bills. 3 of them kind of touch on the same sort of thing, but are all a little bit different. Is there priorities here? Is it we're going to throw it all and see what shakes out here? What are you guys thinking on that? Is there anyone guiding that direction there?
Yeah, thank you for the question. No, all 3 of these House bills are a priority and the Senate bill's a priority, and this ain't throwing something at something to see what sticks. This is what we're after.
How do you see those interacting if they all end up passing both chambers?
Well, House Bill 285 is making MEPA more procedural and not near as regulatory. The good representative standing behind me can elaborate on what theirs does, and you just heard the debate on the House floor. So I think they all three work real well together.
I have a question for Director Nowakowski.
You bet.
So I'm new to these issues, but I was listening to Representative Oblander talk about his bill and the checks that need to be put in place on DEQ and local governments. Do you feel like DEQ has had too much power in some instances and has maybe overreached? How do you feel about having those added restrictions?
I think on that front, I think it's important, as was stated on the House floor, in recognizing the Montana Constitution, that the legislature is charged with setting those standards. And if standards that are stricter than federal standards are needed, the legislature is in the driver's seat on making those decisions.
Is there any plans or discussions about the underlying permitting statutes? I know that's kind of, the thing that during the case that was discussed a lot. Are we just talking about MEPA here, or are we going to look at any of those permitting statutes as well?
To date, it's hard for me not to get up here and say, Mr. Chairman. We have looked at some of those permitting statutes. The court rulings dealt with MEPA, and that is why this package of legislation deals with MEPA. One of the court rulings in particular did lay out some issues in the Clean Air Act, which is the bill that Representative Oblander's House Bill 291 addresses squarely. But again, all of those cases centered around MEPA, not around permitting actions.
Representative Oblander. Sir,
Yes.
I'm Jonathan Andarian from the Montana Building Network. Sir, I believe that you said on the floor that the state doesn't have currently any standards that are higher than federals that would be affected by this. Are there any of the local agencies that have any higher standards that would be affected?
None that I'm aware of. Right now, as we've looked at everything, the standards that are already in existence, we do not exceed those at this time.
This might be a good question for an attorney, possibly attorney later, but anyone can take a stab at it if they want. I am wondering, with the Held decision, you talked a lot about court cases. Are you worried that these bills are just going to end up right back in court and put us back in the same place for the next session?
That's a good question. The truth of the matter is there's probably going to be lawsuits no matter what, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. If we can get some guidance from the courts as to what meets the standard and what doesn't meet the standard for conducting a MEPA analysis, I think that's okay. I think our goal here is obviously to clarify it, so we can get some certainty for people. What they can expect, what they know they need to do, what the MEPA analysis looks like, and if there's a lawsuit and we get some guidance from the court on that, I think that'll actually probably help us a little. I look at, I've read the Held case, I've read the Laurel Gas Plant case. I think there's some guidance in there, but I think it's a little hazy, and that's why I think we need to pass these bills so that we can get a little bit more clarity in the law and a better direction about where we should go.
All right, I got time for one or two more. Do you have any last takers?
I guess probably for Speaker Ler, I'm just curious, in an overall sense, what you think, if this package of bills were to pass, what do you think the difference would be in how it would manifest itself in terms of how projects go forward? What do you think the difference would be overall?
Sure. All these package of bills, whether it's Senator Galt's bill or the three House bills we have in front of you today, will make it easier and more affordable and streamline the process and make projects that we see around the state right now held up in court more attainable, which will then produce more good paying jobs in the state of Montana, more stable economy in the state of Montana, and allow for folks to thrive in the state of Montana.
Thank you.
All right, I'll give you one more. Anybody? All right, well, thanks for coming, everyone. We appreciate it.